Welcome to Alzheimer's Sunrise, lighting the way for patients and caregivers on Legends 100.3, brought to you by Alzheimer's Community Care, providing help and hope for thousands of families for the past 20 years. Here's Mary Barnes, CEO of Alzheimer's Community Care.
Hello. Wonderful, wonderful day today. Karen, how are you doing today? Karen Gilbert, who is my co-host.
Doing great, Mary. Thank you.
On our Alzheimer's Sunrise. We're shining a light on a path for our caregivers and patients. That's the name of and that's the theme of our show. And we have an exciting guest today, one that is very, very critical to the safety and security of our Alzheimer's patients, which is Chief Deputy Michael Gauger from our local Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office. Chief, we've been working together and doing things with Alzheimer's since, you said, 1998?
Yes, right after Alzheimer's Community Care was formed. So I think Jim was the one Frangikakis was the one who got us all involved.
Yeah.
So
he was one of our founders.
Yes.
And we just lost him a few years ago, but he had a passion for what we were doing. And one of the first things that we were lucky enough to do is we had a wonderful officer, too. His name was Rick Lincoln. He was president of the Palm Beach County Chiefs Association, and we did a sort of a search and rescue. We had gotten a grant, and we started looking at what was going on when a patient does so, in fact, leave and get lost.
Right.
This is before we knew anything about what we know now.
Right.
But that was a very basic approach that we did with all the local sheriff's office, all the local police and sheriff's office, and it was pretty neat for that period of time. But that led into the other, in looking at really people that it's grown as far as the population has grown, but one of the awareness needs of search and rescue. How important is that to law enforcement?
Well, Mary, I think it's very, very important, and I would start with this. I'm in my 47th year of law enforcement.
Wow!
I started in January 1971, and we had very little training on cognitive disorders. Alzheimer's, dementia, all the other things, autism, things that are really important that police should know, but there was no training. So over time, now that we have developed training, we have crisis intervention training, a 40-hour block that teaches officers how to respond and what those cognitive disorders can cause and how they make people react. So that training has helped officers so much. In fact, it's taught them a lot of things like why does a person wander? Where do they go? What are they thinking? What's the process? Where will they head to? How they walk towards water, and wooded areas, and those
and
are
empty
the
buildings,
right. Or maybe they go to work where they used to work, or an old family member or a friend, and they walk towards that. So those are things that police have been trained on now. How to look, how to respond.
One of the things that I have learned in working with you and working with law enforcement, they really do, there's a calling that an officer has when they become an officer or they join a law enforcement agency, and they really want to make a difference. In those days, they really did not know what kind of difference they could make. And that, I feel, was almost like, it almost made them feel that they didn't want to be involved because they really didn't know how they should be involved.
Right, Mary. And I would also say that we also learned that how important it is to find them within that 24-hour or 48-hour, 70-hour block of time, because
That's right.
The chances of finding them alive are good in that period. But if it goes beyond that, there's a strong possibility that they may have lost their lives.
Yeah, back around in the year right after 1998, there was a study that was done by an individual. Her name was Dr. Meredith Rowe, and she had done a nation study for over 3 years about when they found patients deceased because they had gotten lost. How did they find him? I mean, and where did they find him? Was it the first mile, second mile, third mile, fourth mile? And it was astonishing for us to learn that 80% of those that were deceased were within a mile of where they lived, and that was a real eye opener for us as an organization. And I think it was for law enforcement too, because it changed the strategy on how you do search and rescue. Is that fair to say?
I would say yes, Mary, and then too that we've had such a huge population growth with our senior community.
Yes.
So when we look in Florida, there are about 500,000 people, are facing dementia or have dementia now
Right.
of some form, Alzheimer's, and how important it is for us to improve our responses so that we can locate these individuals, and along with what your organization, Alzheimer's Community Care, has done, is training the caregivers so that there's an opportunity that stops the wandering before it starts.
Right.
So that's so important as well.
Giving families and tools. You want to say something, Karen?
I wanted to add that we are so proud to be on the regular schedule for crisis intervention training. I'll be presenting a training on Monday. It's a very impressive week that your staff goes through. And typically when I'm scheduled, they've already had a session on mental illness, and they've had one on substance abuse. And it is sometimes difficult, and I certainly can relate to the challenge that they have when they get a 911 call and may not have a lot of information. And when they encounter this person, are they dealing with mental illness, or is it substance abuse, or is it a neurocognitive disorder? It's not always that easy. So we try to help to give them some tools where they can make that determination or call our crisis line, which they often do. And we can give some guidance there as well. Alzheimer's Community Care can be reached at 561-683-2700. We can also receive emails through our info@alzcare.org. That is info@alzcare.org.
We're still listening to Alzheimer's Sunrise and following up with our questions and wise information from Chief Deputy Michael Gauger. This is kind of a end statement, but hasn't the change of all this education the last 20 years been a big boost, say for our cause with involving law enforcement?
Absolutely, and a lot of that training has focused on how we deal with the individual when we make contact, because that can go bad very quickly, because some of the patients are very aggressive and hostile and angry. They get confused. They don't respond to yelling. They may respond to soft voices and the words, "Can I help you?"
Yes.
So those are the things that we're teaching our officers now, because we're aware, Mary, of a situation that developed,
Right.
Of a man who absconded from
An assisted living facility.
assisted living care facility. That
Yes, and he had a weapon.
Well, he was carrying a small hammer, but
Yeah,
he
small
wandered
hammer.
into a development,
Yep.
was tapping on cars
Guys
and
trying to get
and-
into his car.
Right, and
thought.
officers responded, and that one did not go very well.
No.
But since those officers have all been trained, they know how to deal with them now. They're not yelling at them to halt, stop. That's the training that we've focused on. So it's like I said, it's made a huge difference.
When we first started, and of course we're always learning every day too, from the behaviors, what our patients are saying to us, and invariably a patient, when somebody walks up to him and says, "Well, where are you going?" Or, "Well, I want to go home." Right. Now, home is where? We're thinking, okay, you're in West Palm Beach, or you're in Palm Beach Gardens, and you're thinking it's right down the street or around the corner, and guess what? It's New York City, or it's up there in Chicago somewhere, or
even sometimes where they live right then.
That's right.
That's their home, and it's been their home, but they lose all that ability to distinguish that. But Mary, I have to compliment you, because it's organizations like yours, Alzheimer's Community Care, that has given the training, that has brought attention to this. It's got people to talk about it. The conferences that you've put on where people have been trained, the folks that you bring in to help caregivers themselves learn and understand how to treat that, and how to follow a procedure that changing the locks on the doors, watching for signals from the individual
Right.
that will
The cues.
that
Yep.
keys that are going to that they're going to walk away.
That's right.
That they're going to abscond. So that's you know, you've started that conversation, and that's so important.
I didn't realize when we first started Alzheimer's Community Care, because being a community-based organization, we didn't realize that safety and security was going to be such a big issue. Such a big issue. And why not start it with that conversation and putting everybody's heads together with the sheriff's office and the law enforcement? I have to applaud you. I have to applaud all our law enforcement officers, because now they take it completely different. I remember when I first started, and a caregiver would call up, and you'd say, and not you would say, but they would say, well, you know, you probably had an argument. Okay, so he'll be back. He'll cool off, because nobody realized what it meant to say the word Alzheimer's, right, and the meaning of that word.
Well, Sheriff Rick Bradshaw has been very supportive of
Yes.
all the training that we have done.
Yes.
And in addition to that, he's formed a behavioral services unit to work with special cases where people are displaying early signs of Alzheimer's or dementia, and it seems like it might be mental illness, or they're acting strange.
Right.
So neighbors will call, or police will call. So what we'll do is, then we'll move in, we'll send our behavioral services unit, that's law enforcement specially trained, and licensed clinical social workers, mental health workers, to go and help that person get the help that they need, get a hold of family members, work on a plan together to make things better.
Well, I just think that the whole effort, when it comes to search and rescue, is there anything in technology or anything that's going to sort of change the way we do things? I know that's not one of the questions we had listed, but I've been hearing a lot of talk on they're using other types of technology like drones, and they're going to be, is that the wave of the future?
Well, it certainly is, and I think the drones will have trackers attached to them so that they can pick up a signal of, particularly when you use safety net or other devices that may be GPS, that those drones now can be fitted, and they can get into areas and fly closer to the ground than our helicopters can. And we've used helicopters in the past that have been outfitted with tracking devices.
And when you think about the savings that financially, I know the FBI came out with a figure that for every hour that a person is missing, it costs that law enforcement agency $1,500, and the average time for finding somebody is about 9 hours.
Yeah. And that's at a minimum, Mary. When you take officers and you have 30, 40, 50, you call in all your resources, the helicopter talks about $500 just to start it up,
right,
and move it out and get it up in the air. So, and then the hours that it's flying around trying to locate. So it's so important to follow that path of deterring that wandering in the first place.
We're hoping that with these transmitters that we have and these kinds of technology that we could open up the door for Medicare to help, because it is a behavior. It is something that is predictable. It is something that a patient is going to experience. We know that 60% of all our patients will experience at least once some form of wandering. Right. It's built into the DNA of the disease.
I think that those devices are like a CPAP machine. They'll pay for a CPAP machine, or they'll pay for other devices that will help. So why not a tracking device for Alzheimer's?
And we know that if that person is not found within so many hours, we probably won't get that and find that person alive.
That's the sad part. I've worked some of those death investigations.
Yes.
It's striking how many, and we've had so many in Florida, all over the state, involving bodies of water or traffic or trains. So it's critical. We can help with this information at Alzheimer's Community Care. We can be reached at 561-683-2700, or send us an email at info@alzcare.org. That's ALZCARE.org. When we talk about the tracking devices, we have over 200 of those currently in place for our families. And it's amazing. Families don't always realize how far someone can go quickly. We've had patients get out of their home and get on a bus, so you don't know where they could wind up. So the quicker someone calls, we want them to call right away.
And we have wonderful
away.
people in our communities, and they see some well-dressed gentlemen walking around and say they look like they're kind of lost, and they stop by and they said, "Can I give you a ride, or are you?"
Right.
And of course, right away they say, "Oh yeah, thank you," and they get in the car, and before you know it, they're going from this destination to I think I'm over there in the port. So finally, if that person who is being a good Samaritan doesn't know to look at and find a police officer,
We'll keep
that
it.
would really be a help. That's another whole awareness.
Right. Well, that's getting it out to the public and letting the public be aware, and that's what the Silver Alert and
Yes.
Lost on Foot does. And we have to understand that since 2008, 1,712 people have been found thanks to Silver
Alive.
Alert and Lost on Foot.
Yep. That wouldn't have happened before when you think, and every year it gets more and more and busier. That is a statistic we will always have. That will always be a statistic and an issue that we'll always experience because of the fact that we have our snowbirds, we have our visitors, and so we already know as with law enforcement, with all of us that working together, we know it's going to happen. So it's good that we have this system in place.
We'll be back in just a moment with more of Alzheimer's Sunrise.
For Alzheimer's patients and their caregivers, daily life presents many challenges. Be a giver of hope this season by attending Alzheimer's Community Care's annual Palm Beach Luncheon, February 7th at the Beach Club in Palm Beach. All proceeds from the lunch and silent auction benefit patients and caregivers in Palm Beach County. Visit alzcare.org for information and to purchase tickets.
Welcome back to Alzheimer's Sunrise, shining a light on patients and caregivers on Legends Radio 100.3 FM. Mary Barnes,
Hi there.
Karen Gilbert, and our very special guest, Chief Deputy Michael Gauger of Palm Beach County Sheriff's Office.
Good morning.
And we're going to continue talking about the subject matter about law enforcement and involvement in search and rescue, and also with the Silver Alert that keeps evolving because of the technology, because of what we've learned, lessons learned. I've always been very proud of Palm Beach County, though. When we first started and launching the program, Palm Beach County was really, as far as reporting Silver Alerts, was really the busiest in the state of Florida because I felt that law enforcement really valued the plight of our families and the vulnerability of them. So that in itself is a big compliment to you, Chief Gauger, and also to all of law enforcement in Palm Beach County.
Mary, might I add, when we present the crisis intervention training, all of the staff that attend are so incredibly attentive. They so want as much information as they can get. I haven't presented a session yet where I don't have an officer or a dispatcher come and tell me their personal story of a family member at the end of the session. And I also don't believe I've had one yet where we didn't have someone talk about a search and rescue and a very successful recovery, most often because they have the locator bracelet and can be found virtually in minutes.
And we've even had stories out in Pahokee, for instance. We had a situation where one of our patients was on a Palm Tram bus and was going to their doctor's office. The caregiver thought that was okay and to have them go in. Pahokee and that whole community is very tight and very small. So sure enough, he goes into the doctor's office and she comes out. Well, she doesn't see the Palm Tram, or she doesn't see, and so she decides that she's going to walk to go home. Basically, she was coming to our daycare center, but of course she was going to go home. Well, as she was walking, an off-duty Palm Tram driver happens to see and knew her, and of course she had the transmitter on her arm, and so she stops, and this patient happened to be one of those patients that had a lot of personality and I know where I'm going, that kind of thing. So automatically called the law enforcement because of the transmitter, and automatically the sheriff's office personnel showed up, and everybody knew that the next stop was going to be to our center, and that's what happened. And guess what? that person was in the community and in the hands of safety throughout the whole time.
And Mary, that's the important thing, and it's lost on foot. We have to understand that 60 to 70% of the people who develop this cognitive disorder, Alzheimer's, dementia, are going to wander away from their supervised care. You know, over the past 2 years, I think in the state of Florida, it's 950 people eloped from assisted living facilities that were suffering from those disorders. So I have to say that's why those bracelets and those other things are so important. When we have cases now where folks wander, what I have directed our officers to do is they go back to that house the next day and they sit down with the family and they provide the information on the trackers.
And that's powerful.
On the bracelets.
Yes.
You know what? Because, you know, not only for the safety of that family, but for our, you know, when we bring in 30, 40, 50 people and all the resources that we have, that means that pulls them away from all the other things that we do.
Yes.
So if we can deter that wandering in the first place,
right,
that's what's so important.
And Karen did some statistical fact finding, and we're finding out that the numbers are going down from Palm Beach County, and I do believe it's because of the fact that of incidents. So I do believe it's our work with together, but also the safety net project that we have with the transmitters and just sticking close to those families, letting them know every month there's somebody that goes to the home or they go to one of our centers, changes those batteries, changes those wristbands, and gives a chance for the conversation. How are things going and everything? So there's that, especially for our what we call our escape artists. Because an Alzheimer's patient, when they want to get out and they want to go, they can go. And with one, like Karen said, I'm going to echo, they can move very, very fast.
Well, remember the fellow from Delray? He was a retired doctor.
Yes.
Extremely intelligent.
Right.
You know, and that's what we have. I mean, it knows no boundaries.
No.
The disease knows no boundaries.
We have had corporate presidents, we've had congressmen, we've had doctors. I mean, you know, one of our whole issues, I mean, we're very active in many communities, but we don't have any poster child. We don't have any because everybody's still a lot of in denial. A lot of it people want to keep as a secret, like it's something to be ashamed of, and it's something to be, and that, first of all, it saddens me a lot because it's, if you know, when you go into a doctor's office and you say you've got cancer, right away there's a whole set of medical principles that doctor follows, or that and you can see it because you see the mass, or when you look in some sort of MRI or something, they can see all the effects that cancer would have.
Right. And let me throw this in real quick, Mary. Karen, is that those who are economically challenged sometimes have that income from that family member who they don't want to lose that income.
That's true.
They're using that income themselves.
That's true.
So what they do is they don't do what's best for that person, for the person suffering from the disease. They do what's best for them. And we had one case where the lady had locked her mother into a room and stripped the entire room. And when we found that lady, she was about 80 pounds and had died in that room. And they were indicted, she and her husband, for abuse.
That's
and
one
the death.
And the laws have changed too, and with able to prove that now, and be able to have the expertise in the community to talk about Alzheimer's and the judgment, the lack of judgment, executive functioning, and all that. We all know so much more than we did years ago. There's been over the years some heartbreaking stories, but we didn't have the resources. But now the system and everybody is really recognizing that. Right. So that Chief Deputy Geiger, we're going to have you back again to talk about scams, because that in itself is a huge discussion. Okay. And talking about how does it get out of control, and how do all of us, I think, have our own different stories about heartbreaking situations. And I know that, you know, having this open discussion about it, I know will enlighten a lot of myself in the process, and others as well, in realizing that this is such a dangerous part of the disease cycle.
Yeah, please, the listening public, call in. Call in and get the help you need. Karen?
Yes, you can reach us at 561-683-2700, or send us an email, info@alzcare.org. That's info@alzcare.org. You'll reach Alzheimer's Community Care.
Well, just to sort of summarize, it's been a pleasure having you today, Chief Deputy Michael Geiger. And again, like I said, we're going to have you back again. But I'll tell you, I am so proud of our law enforcement. We call them our partners, and just being able to save our families' lives, not only when it comes to the patient, but also with the caregiver as well, because they don't feel like when they do have a situation, they have somebody that they feel understands them and can help them. I had one caregiver say, I reported, my husband being lost, and they brought him back, but they weren't even mad.
No, they're passionate
That's
about
right.
the safety. Law enforcement is absolutely passionate about the safety, and they want to partner with the families to put that safety net around these patients. This is a community disease. It doesn't occur in the hospital. It doesn't occur for so many in the nursing home. They live at home for the course of their life. So it takes all of us to keep them safe.
And that's why our name is so great for this program,
It
because
is.
it's Alzheimer's Sunrise. And it talks about, I think today we really shined a big light for our families and for caregivers, and to understand really so many other ways. Yes, when you get this disease, but it's not hopeless. And we as an organization, we always say where there's help, there's hope. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
And
You're most welcome.
thank you. Thank you. This is Alzheimer's Sunrise. Thank you very much.
Thanks for listening to Alzheimer's Sunrise, lighting the way for patients and caregivers. To learn more about the help and hope available from Alzheimer's Community Care, call 561-683-2700 or visit alzcare.org. That's ALZcare.org. Tune in next Sunday at 6:30 for another edition of Alzheimer's Sunrise, lighting the way for patients and caregivers right here on Legends 100.3.